Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's random topic, I don't really know how to put it into proper words. To me, it's kind of like, is it too late to kind of nerd out about something? Like, it's my weird way of phrasing, like saying like, do you ever get that feeling like you feel bad when you kind of jump in the middle of a TV show? Like, the fact is that you didn't start watching this show immediately. I don't necessarily mean like you literally started watching it in the middle, which in some cases that's kind of what I mean, but overall, like, let me use the example of like the TV show Grimm. I didn't start watching Grimm until roughly around the time of its second season. It was like partway into its second season before I started it from the very beginning and everything. But still, even then, it's like, I feel kind of bad that it wasn't like, I didn't know the show's existence immediately. Like, even then, that was only 2 seasons in, but still, like, there's that little, I don't know, that little nerdy aspect of me that's like, I wish I'd been watching the show from the beginning. Like, I could have been giving the show my attention, love, and support from the very beginning. I mean, granted, as we know, Grimm went on to, like, have 6 seasons, so, I mean, I think for, you know, any TV show, that's very good, you know. So it's such a weird thing, I know, but it's like, I feel that way about a lot of TV shows, but it's like, I always feel weird when I jump into the middle of the TV show, because in the sense of like, there's a lot of TV shows that I watched that I didn't start watching until partway into the history. A great example of it is Doctor Who. I think I've mentioned this before in the podcast and stuff like that, but when it comes to Doctor Who, I didn't start watching Doctor Who until roughly around season 6, or rather series 6 had just ended, and then I started like Doctor Who from the beginning. Like, I knew about Doctor Who, I'd heard about it, but I'd never watched anything of it, and then I sat down and watched it from the beginning, and obviously just like super fell in love with it and everything. So what kind of sparked this whole random topic? I mean, obviously it's something I've been thinking about, but most recently my nephew started watching Ben 10 Omniverse. If you've never, I mean, obviously, you know, if you're unfamiliar with the Ben 10 series, it's a cartoon. I'm not going to go too deeply into it, but nevertheless, there are multiple cartoons within the Ben 10 series, and most recently, you know, last month, Cartoon Network started airing like the most, like, I guess I would go as far as saying a reboot of the series. And I guess because he liked that, he decided to kind of go back and watch the other Ben 10 series. But the only one he has access to, at least that is the only one that's on demand to my knowledge, is Omniverse, which in the grand scheme of the Ben 10 series, which there are multiple series within the entirety of the Ben 10 series, Omniverse is the last one, it's the 4th one. And so to me, I even noticed, I was like, that's weird. You're literally jumping at the tail end of a series, which obviously, like, he doesn't have much of a choice, but on some level that bothers me, because there's like 3 other series before that you have to watch before you get to that point, because it's like, you know, because there's so much story that you're not getting just from this one series, which I'm like, I mean, Ben 10 is one of those shows I'm sure you could jump on at any point in time, but you won't recognize some of the villains, you won't understand like the relationships, like, some of the characters have. And I mean, that doesn't just apply to Ben 10, that applies to all series. I mean, to me, I don't do that myself. When I do, it typically has always been with crime dramas that typically have that more police procedural aspect to them, so it's like a case-to-case basis. So it's like, you know, an example is like The Mentalist or Bones. Like, they're typically police procedural and have, like, you know, it's a case-to-case basis, but even then that still applies to like, oh, you don't know these relationships that's been built up between these characters, as well as even those series have overarching stories that you will miss, that you might end up jumping in the middle of. So I saw them from time to time because obviously they syndicate on TNT at the time. I mean, and that's when I started kind of really watching them, and then that got me interested to go back and watch them from the very beginning. Typically, it's not very narrative stuff that I start in the middle of. There have been exceptions though, like for example, Smallville. I've talked about it before, like how much I didn't, like I said before, I never realized how little of Smallville I had seen until I rewatched the entire series like a year or 2 ago, and I was like, man, I missed so much of this series because there's certain story elements. I'm like, oh, I thought that storyline was only 1 season long. It's like, no, that takes up a majority of the entire series. That's incredible. The particular storyline I'm talking about is the whole like Chloe having feelings for Clark. That storyline went on a lot longer than I thought it was. I thought that was like a 1 season thing and done, but it's like, that was a very residual continuous thing. But obviously, because I bounced around the series a lot, catching stuff here and there, but I missed a lot of the narratives, and like I ended up watching like most of the final season. So that's an example. Another example is Lost, and we all know Lost is not the type of series you just jump into, but this was like years ago when I was in high school, because I remember I had a friend named Lemuel who me and him would constantly talk about it. Now at that point in time, I had not seen a lot of Lost. I saw like a few episodes of the 1st season, and that was roughly it. To put in perspective, the jumping on point had to be like season 4 or season 5, because roughly around that time was around the time the island started, spoiler alert, started moving and started time traveling. So yeah, not the best point to kind of jump into the series. Obviously, subsequently, I've gone back and rewatched the entire series, as you know, but still, that's not a show, you know, but I've never done it with any other shows besides that, because everything else, it's like, I've watched it from the very beginning, because it's like, oh, I was lucky enough to actually know about a show's existence. I know it's such a weird, like, quirk to have, but that's just the way I am, because I feel bad if I don't know about a show that obviously I really like, because I feel bad. It's like, oh, it took me to this point to know about this show's existence. I should have known about it from the very beginning. It's like, there's tons and tons of shows, and it even just applies to TV shows. It applies to anime and manga. It's like, these existed a long time. There's like so much media and material when it comes to entertainment like that. It's okay for you to kind of let certain things kind of fall between the cracks and stuff like that, you know? Because there are other things that I've kind of walked into, like, most of the way through. Like, I think the biggest example is Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad, I didn't start watching Breaking Bad until, like, it was like, obviously when I say watching it, I meant started it from the beginning. I didn't go into it knowing anything. But I've heard people bring up Breaking Bad before, and by the time I started officially watching it, like, the first half of season 5 had just ended like a little bit before I started watching it. So I got pretty late into that, which I feel bad about. In those cases, it's not like I even watched the middle of those series, but it's just, I always feel bad when I'm late to the game when it comes to certain things. I feel like I'm not properly putting it, because I'm contradicting myself a lot, I know, but it's just like I have a hard time kind of really putting it into words what I mean. Because another example I've heard someone talk, I won't say what show and I won't say who, but there's like a TV show where someone's like, okay, so basically you want to start the show at this season because that's when, you know, the show's really good. What you want to do is get the recaps of the first and second season, which I'm like, no, don't do that. Watch the entirety of the seasons. Yes, you know, some people might feel like there's low points and everything to each season and everything, like, but still just watch the entirety of it because it's so good. And I don't want you just getting the entirety of a show through recaps. It's like, I want you to experience every episode, every aspect of the show, because I feel like you get to appreciate it a lot more. It's a lot dearer to you. My question to you is, has there ever been a point in time where it's like you watch the show, like, because like you're like, I'm not really sure I'm into this show, and you caught glimpses of an episode and then that inspired you to go back and rewatch it from the beginning? Or are you kind of like me where it's like, you know, the basic premise of the show because you heard people talk about it without going into too many spoilers, you know, and then you decided, oh, I'm gonna start it from the beginning? Like, I mean, also let me know, is there much of a difference there between someone telling you something about a show and then you actually watching like a random episode or something? Especially, you know, I mean, does that change your mind depending on what type of show it is? If it's like obviously if it's like a police procedural where it's like a case-to-case basis, will that change your mind? A great example is like Zombie or Lucifer. They have that crime drama police procedural aspect to them, but at the same time they do have like an overarching like storyline that I like, if you jump in the middle of those, you'd be lost and not know who a lot of the characters are and everything they've been through and their experiences, stuff like that. So that's just kind of the whole point I wanted to kind of bring up. Like, this is just a random topic that's kind of been on the back of my mind that I just kind of get your guys' opinions on. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this video. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.